What would be your advice? Given this back and forth, we're just coming off of Turning Point here in Tampa. This was the topic of conversation. What would be your advice in order to take the temperature down on this issue from within the administration?
Well, I do think that there needs to be more transparency on this. And I think that that will happen. I mean, look, I don't know what truly exists there, but I know that this is something that's important to the president as well. He does want transparency on all these fronts, that everything we're talking about, because it's frustrated him as well. He sat for 4 years like the rest of us did and saw lie after lie and saw our country just being sent down the wrong path. And it was really frightening and very upsetting to a lot of people to see. And I would actually say over the past 10 years, we've all kind of endured this. Prior to that, it was probably happening, Benny, but we just weren't as aware of it. It wasn't until Donald Trump came down that golden escalator that he just kind of blew the doors off of everything. And people started to wake up and realize, wait a minute, things are not as they have always been presented to us. And I do believe that you will see that. Now, as it relates to the president, I know that this is probably not his number one thing he's focused on. He's focused on a lot of other important things. We've got this big announcement with Russia going on, I think, as we're speaking right now at the White House. We have, a Middle East, we're trying to get peace over there. We're trying to make sure that Iran's nuclear arsenal is obviously completely decimated. We want to make sure everything is on the right track for this country. Fortunately, you've seen no border crossings in the last month. Zero, by the way. I think that's incredible. No one's talking about that enough. Zero illegal border crossings in the month of June. Amazing how that's all gone. So I don't know that this was top of mind for him, but he hears all the noise and he hears all of the consternation out there. And I think he's going to want to set things right as well. So I believe that there will probably be more coming on this. And I believe anything that they are able to release that doesn't, damage any witnesses or anyone underage or anything like that, I believe they'll probably try to get out sooner rather than later because they hear it and they understand it. So hopefully we see that happen sooner than later. And I guess that would be my advice. But to everybody out there who's all worked up about it, there's no great plot to keep this information away that I'm aware of. I do just believe that maybe it's been slow rolled for reasons that hopefully we understand down the line. And I think we're probably going to get more transparency on it very soon.
Laura, thank you so much for being on the program. What an exciting time to be alive. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of all of us watching your father-in-law get saved, a miracle from God, and you had an exclusive interview with your father on your show, My View, on Fox News. And so I wanted to just give you the floor on that and take a moment to sort of, absorb that somber moment. And what was the feelings in that interview? I know we have a couple clips.
Yeah, it was sort of amazing that it was already a year, Benny. I think for some of us, it feels like it was yesterday. For some of us, it feels like it was almost 10 years ago now. There's so much that's happened. But certainly for our family, it's a moment we'll never forget. And I think it's one of those moments for probably most Americans where we'll look back, decades from now and say, I remember where I was when this happened. It truly was a miracle. I'm glad you used that word. A miracle that Donald Trump is still alive today. He never put that chart up until the last half of his rally. He put it up within the first 5 minutes of his rally and happened to look at the exact right time, as we've all seen over and over again. So the bullet only grazed his ear and nothing worse, thank God. And he believes that after that, he was left here on earth and he was spared to make sure that we got this country back on track to save America. He says that time and time again. And he does believe it was a miracle. And so, whenever I got this show on Fox and I told my father-in-law about it, he said, if you want me on your first episode, your ratings will go through the roof. And I said, you know what? I actually think that I'm going to save it. And I don't know exactly the right time, but let me get my feet under me and I'll let you know. And as we approached this anniversary, I thought there's no better time to have him come on my show and to sit down with him as a family member, as the mother to 2 of his grandchildren, than that anniversary. And to be honest with you, whenever I was about to ask him the questions about it, I felt a little bit emotional because I don't think any of us in our family could feel any other way. It was a really tough thing to watch and a tough time for all of us to go through. But it's his response. I always really appreciate when it comes to the United States Secret Service. There's a lot that was said about them in the wake of that. And I certainly think the leadership at that time, fair game, there were requests made that were denied supposedly by the top leadership at the Secret Service, requests for more personnel, requests for heavier detail for him. And, you look at some of the missteps. I do not believe we will ever see that happen again. There is a new Secret Service director, Sean Curran. I've personally been out there to the Secret Service Training Center. I've seen the changes that they've already made, and there's so much more to come. So he always has great, kind words to say about the Secret Service. And I will say every individual who you saw put their life on the line in that moment on July 13th of 2024 on that stage in Butler, Pennsylvania, they did their job, Benny. They jumped on stage. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they were willing to risk their life to save his. So our entire family is grateful to them. I do think as it relates to the overall scope of things, there are a lot of Americans that still have questions, but the president told me himself he is satisfied with the briefing and the download that he's received from the DOJ and from the FBI on it.
Maybe you can help us square this circle, because yesterday the New York Post ran with this story that says the Secret Service officials were aware of a threat to your father's life 10 days before this rally, and yet engaged in these systemic failures that we witnessed at the rally. Multiple agents were put on suspensions over those failures. I think there's obviously Cheadle lost her job, Rowe lost his job. But there are many people asking the question, like, why the hell did this happen? Obviously, the shadow of this, Laura, is that some forces inside of our federal government really wanted your father-in-law to take a bullet that day, and on purpose made sure that the B, D, and C teams were there, that they weren't monitoring a rooftop. The videos from that day is just chaotic. It makes us angry as MAGA supporters and as supporters of your father-in-law, that happened. Every American should be rightfully frustrated by it. Did you get into this at all? And what is your take on that?
Well, it's funny because if you go back to that time, you have to kind of look at what was going on with Donald Trump, right? He had just, come to the end of this trial in downtown Manhattan, the Alvin Bragg trial, another one of these witch hunt cases that we all knew was bogus from the beginning. And the goal, as we all acknowledged at the time, and I think now in retrospect is very clear, was to prevent him from ever becoming president of the United States. Whether you're talking about Alvin Bragg, whether you're talking about Fannie Willis, whether you're talking about Letitia James, they all had the same goal, which was to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president again. You couple that with just the kind of hatred that was thrown his way overall during that time period. And I think to a lot of us in our family, we looked around in those moments and we said, well, what else could they possibly do to this man? How could they possibly go against him to prevent him from becoming president? And to a lot of us, the only other outcome was something like this happening. And it was always a fear, I think, for all of us in our family and to a lot of people who were close to my father-in-law, specifically at that time. So in the context of that, yes, I think in the moments following all of this happening, there were a lot of us who said, well, maybe this was all part of a bigger plan. Now, obviously, we don't have the full information, and I hope we can all receive that information. I hope for Core's family, we can receive that information because this is a man who lost his life because of the failures of that day. But yeah, it does make you question, why did this happen? Why, if there was an obvious threat, if there was an imminent threat, wasn't there more done? Why, if there were, requests multiple times, it was a dozen times, his campaign team and detail leader requested more personnel for him and a bigger footprint for this nominee for president, Republican nominee for president of the United States. Why wasn't there more given to him? So I don't have the answer to that question, obviously, but it does still go through a lot of our minds. And I will tell you, in the wake of that happening, that's kind of how it felt to our whole family. Like, oh my God, they've done everything possible to Donald Trump to stop him from becoming president. This is the only other thing that could possibly happen to prevent it from ultimately becoming true.
Yeah, and again, this is the widest viewed miracle in history. I think God was doing real work here, but that's not what we should have to depend upon.
Right.
We shouldn't have to depend upon a missed bullet in 3 centimeters. There should be quite a bit more layers of protection, and these failures must never happen again. In the same week, we find out, according to the disclosures from Congress, that Lee Harvey Oswald was effectively just a CIA asset, and that they had multiple operations involving Lee Harvey Oswald in a huge scandal that deserved, I think, a lot more attention. And so it just colors all of this it puts quite a cloud over it, Laura.
Yeah, well, and you look, Benny, at all of the things that have happened prior to that election cycle, right? Look at what they did. Donald Trump said consistently, Obama spied on my campaign. Well, we found out afterward, Obama did spy on his campaign. You look at the 51 former CIA intelligence agents who signed the document saying the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. You look at the way that, you have the FBI agents, Strzok and Page, who were going actively against Donald Trump to prevent him from becoming president while they were working for the federal government. You look at all of this stuff and you say to yourself, well, maybe it's not so far-fetched that there was some greater plot, there was some greater goal to prevent, Donald Trump from getting back in that White House. I think that we all often say that the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is something like 6 months. Now, in this case, maybe it'll be a little over a year. But it does feel very strange to look at all that's happened to this one man, all that was happening in this time frame to this one man, and not say, well, is it some sort of a coincidence that some guy who came out of nowhere, who no one had heard of, this Crooks individual, never really had a background. We don't know much about him, and we still don't know much about him because his body was burned very shortly after that whole situation. So leaves a lot of questions, unfortunately.
Yes, your husband said famously that he was incinerated faster than a household pet who died, and this has still got to cause extreme consternation because we know absolutely nothing. We've never seen any of the. I mean, listen, every person has cell phone records, every person has email records. We've seen nothing. Have you, given the fact that you are a direct member of the family, has anyone briefed you on who Matthew Thomas Crooks was, what his motivations were, who he was communicating with that day? Because we see photos taken by Secret Service of him on the phone. He's calling someone, Laura. Do we know who he called?
I do not have any of that information. And I think it's interesting,
here's the photo, by the way.
Knowing my father-in-law for as long as I have, 17 years now or so, the way he operates, as far as I understand him, is that whenever there's a situation like this, that is very challenging to go through, that's obviously traumatic, I think he kind of boxes it up and puts it away, and he doesn't want to think about it. And you've kind of seen him, Benny, in a lot of these interviews where people are asking him specifically about, July 13th from last year. He says, I try not to think about it. He said in the interview with me that, you are putting your life at risk if you're a bull rider. 1/10 of 1% of bull riders are killed. 1% of 1% of race car drivers are killed. 5% of presidents are killed. And so he knows the risks, and he knows that this was a life-altering moment, a moment where things could have taken a turn for the worse. But I think he kind of boxes it up and puts it away. And that's how he's able to focus on taking this country back and making sure that we're going in the right direction and fixing all the wrongs that happened over the past 4 years, et cetera. He can't focus on this. And so he told me he was satisfied with the information that he received. But in a lot of ways, I almost think he doesn't even want to talk about it. Maybe he doesn't want to know more about it because it's a way that he personally processes things and deals with things. So no, none of us in the family have been briefed on it. I don't know. I don't have any more information on, obviously, the individual who tried to assassinate him. There is one person who is still alive who was attempting to kill him. And I think we're going to see that man in court in September, I believe, down in Florida. So maybe we can get some info from that guy. Unfortunately, Crooks, we're not going to get a whole lot out of him anymore.
What did you say? That the timeline between conspiracy theory to established fact is 6 months. Okay, good. That's true for you. You had the most famous clip with Jake Tapper, where you said, "Yo, Joe Biden, he's got real problems up in the head," and obviously that clip is now infamous, and Jake Tapper squealed and clutched his pearls. Now Jake Tapper's trying to make money off of the thing that you said was fact. And this morning, according to the New York Times, massive breaking story about Joe Biden and his auto pen and how it is an absolute fact that you were right. What would it be? 5 years ago now, Laura?
Yeah, it was 2020.
That you were right. We have the clip right here. We'll just pop it up. But everyone's heard it before. Here's you saying this. Jake Tapper got so offended And now, lo and behold, this morning, we find out that the entire administration was literally run by an auto pen. Your reaction here?
Yeah, well, I don't think this is a surprise, Benny, because we all looked at Joe Biden in the clip that you're referencing. That was during the campaign when he was running for president, before he became president. And we were worried about him then. And throughout the course of his time as president, we all had questions. We all had concerns. We all saw him slipping, going up the Air Force One steps, falling off bikes, all these different things that were very concerning, not able to even really make coherent sentences in any sort of a press setting where everything was very set up. Everything was, he had very specific people he was supposed to call on. Very concerning to all of us. The funny part to me is the only actual signed, pardon that he gave in those last sloth of pardons, where he found 1,500 pardons that he, just kind of had to get him out, or someone did, was Hunter Biden's. He was the only one that Joe Biden actually signed. The auto pen was used for everyone else, and everything else, used for executive orders, used for everything under the sun. And constitutionally, I don't know, some people would say, oh, well, verbally, if he said okay, then that was acceptable. Do we believe that if we questioned Joe Biden on every single one of those pardons, he would be able to say whether or not he actually pardoned those individuals? I'll go back to Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, back in, I believe, January, when he had a conversation with Joe Biden about, limiting or preventing our liquid natural gas exports. And he said, why did you sign this executive order, Mr. President? Why did you do that? It's going to hurt the United States of America. And Joe Biden said, I didn't sign that. And Speaker Johnson said, yes, you did. Your signature is on this document. Benny, he didn't know what he was signing at almost any turn. So to believe that he knew what was happening within the running of the day-to-day in our government is ridiculous. To believe he knew what was happening with all of these pardons is ridiculous. And I think it's very telling that the only one they actually took the time to get Joe Biden to sign in all of this was Hunter Biden's, because that's the one that really had to stick, not just for Hunter, but for the entire Biden family, because they're all implicated in something that's a lot bigger and a lot more damaging and dangerous to the United States. Should Hunter Biden ever kind of go in front of Congress, have to go into another court of law, and be questioned about a lot of things that happened during the time his father was vice president, all the way up through his end of his presidential term. And I'll couple that with, we also saw Joe Biden's doctor plead the fifth, every single question he was asked last week. So you tell me what's going on there. I think to most Americans, they look at that and they say, this guy had no idea what was going on. He certainly wasn't in control of the government. And I do think we need to get to the bottom of who was making all the decisions, because that's not how this country is supposed to run.
Yes. And this is what people voted for. This 77 million people voted for your father-in-law, obviously for this transparency, because we knew we were being lied to. We knew Joe Biden. We saw Joe Biden falling ass backwards down the stairs of Air Force One. We knew he wasn't running the country. We knew that they ran the Russia hoax. We knew that they ran the January 6th hoax. We knew that there was something else going on with the Trump assassination attempts. And the lies end up creating a real pressure cooker for people. And I think that might be part of the question with this Epstein saga, is that the pressure, we've been lied to for so long by people, decades of this, and it's been abuse, and people, much like a dog that's been, you lash out, right? You bite when somebody even puts their hand near you. I think people are just, they have such a high pressure incidence right now that they just want full transparency on just absolutely everything. You and your show have spoken with so many individuals throughout the administration. I think you've scored the only interview with Susie Wiles, for instance, which was very interesting. Hearing her take on Elon was fascinating. What would be your advice? Given this back and forth, we're just coming off of Turning Point here in Tampa. This was the topic of conversation. What would be your advice in order to take the temperature down on this issue from within the administration?
Well, I do think that there needs to be more transparency on this. And I think that will happen. I mean, look, I don't know what truly exists there, but I know that this is something that's important to the president as well. He does want transparency on all these fronts, everything we're talking about, because it's frustrated him as well. He sat for 4 years like the rest of us did and saw lie after lie and saw our country just being sent down the wrong path. And it was really frightening and very upsetting to a lot of people to see. And I would actually say over the past 10 years, we've all kind of endured this. Prior to that, it was probably happening, Benny, but we just weren't as aware of it. It wasn't until Donald Trump came down that golden escalator that he just kind of blew the doors off of everything. And people started to wake up and realize, wait a minute, things are not as they have always been presented to us. And I do believe that you will see that. Now, as it relates to the president, I know that this is probably not his number one thing he's focused on. He's focused on a lot of other important things. We've got this big announcement with Russia going on, I think, as we're speaking right now at the White House. We have, a Middle East. We're trying to get peace over there. We're trying to make sure that Iran's nuclear arsenal is obviously completely decimated. We want to make sure everything is on the right track for this country. Fortunately, you've seen no border crossings in the last month. 0, by the way. I think that's incredible. No one's talking about that enough. 0 illegal border crossings in the month of June. Amazing how that's all gone. So I don't know that this was top of mind for him, but he hears all the noise and he hears all of the consternation out there. And I think he's going to want to set things right as well. So I believe that there will probably be more coming on this. And I believe anything that they are able to release that doesn't, damage any witnesses or anyone underage or anything like that, I believe they'll probably try to get out sooner rather than later because they hear it and they understand it. So hopefully we see that happen sooner than later. And I guess that would be my advice. But to everybody out there who's all worked up about it, there's no great plot to keep this information away that I'm aware of. I do just believe that maybe it's been slow rolled for reasons that hopefully we understand down the line. And I think we're probably going to get more transparency on it very soon.
It's obviously a delicate balance and obviously something that perhaps a question that you may have to face, given that there are quite a few rumblings of you seeking potentially higher office. And these are questions of people who seek higher office. And, if you were in the Senate, right, presumably an intel committee, you'd get a vote on things like this. Perhaps you could give us a little bit of runway on what your thoughts are in the Senate. North Carolina Senate seat is going to be wide open for a North Carolina girl.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, Benny, I feel like we had just talked about the Florida Senate seat that needed to be filled for Marco Rubio here together on your show. And so obviously it's something that I've thought about a lot and something that in the right timing I'd like to do. Now, whether that timing is right now or not, I'm not totally sure. It's a bigger conversation for my family because, as you know, it's not just about one person. Whenever you do anything, it involves your whole family. I have 2 kids, 3 dogs, a husband. A lot to consider in all of this, but nothing would be a greater honor than to be able to serve the people of my home state of North Carolina, to be able to be a change maker. And obviously I've seen that directly from my father-in-law, to see the way one person can impact so many and can encourage so many and influence so many. So it's something that I certainly would like to do. I got to figure out whether this is the time or whether it'll be in the future, but I'm looking into it. It's kind of all fresh and new. We just sort of learned about this a little over a week ago. But I'm thinking about it. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens.
Okay, just one really quickly off the dome. You've interviewed, I think, dozens of high-ranking members of the administration. What is the most shocking moment on your show on Fox News, My View with Laura Trump?
Well, one of my favorites was being able to do a competitive workout with our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. I did that 2 weeks ago, and I got to tell you, they didn't give me an easy workout, Benny. They made sure that I was working hard. And I think you can look at Secretary Hegseth and say the same thing. We were on opposite teams and I was bound and determined to beat him. And I'm a little bit ashamed to say here right now, he beat me. And then I got a call from my father-in-law right after this episode. And he said, tell me the truth. Were these guys stronger than you? And I said, yeah, they're 20-year-old guys who are, they're in the prime of their life. If they can't beat a mom of 2, I don't know what we got going on. I can say with 100% certainty, we've upped the standards in the United States military. This group of men at the Army who allowed me to work out with them, I'm incredibly grateful for it. And you guys just totally took me down. So thank you for the hard workout. I appreciate it.
Looks like you're keeping up. We have the footage playing right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold my own. Don't kid yourself. I'm not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah, I mean, you're not like Lizzo or Rosie O'Donnell here trying to do this, like, yeah.
God,
and we've talked about your CrossFit regimen on the show before. So if there was anyone probably in broadcast TV that could even try to stick with it, it'd be you. I think you did.
I appreciate it.
I think you did I think you did great work.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, potential future senator or Army Ranger. We don't know.
Who knows?
Laura Trump, the international woman of mystery. And we will keep you posted as to what happens next. Godspeed, Laura. Thank you so much. Here's Laura's social media. 2.1 million people follow her on X. You must be one of them. And then tune in to her show on Fox. It airs every week. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much.